through the selection process of the curators for the Biennale?
In essence, because it's a standard government process, we're required to follow what's called supply chain management process. So what we do is we draft a set of specifications which outline obviously the extent to which the curatorial elements come into it, which speak to the overarching curatorial vision, which, as you've mentioned, is all the world's futures, but also then speak to some of the other elements which are almost hidden, which is the logistics, the PR, the marketing, the project management. And we sent those out into the domain to invite proposals. Unfortunately, that first time we did it, we couldn't conclude. Government supply chain management processes are highly technical, and unfortunately we had to cancel that process and reopen, which has left us with very little time to get the work done. But we are confident that Mashabane Rose and the Apartheid Museum will get the work done, given their experience in doing events of this nature internationally.
Why were they the best people to curate the South African Pavilion?
Well, I think they provided a very detailed concept. They have a lot of experience in doing work of this nature. They were aware of the timeframes and had suggested a proposal which really made sense in terms of the very short time that is left. So it was a good experienced team, a credible team, a team that had done international work before, and certainly people with a lot of artistic sensibility and a very good curatorial proposal.
How many contenders were there overall that were out for this tender?
In the first iteration, there were 6. Unfortunately, as we came to the second iteration, there were 2, mainly because, as people communicated to us, the time frames. A lot of the prospective tenderers were exceptionally concerned about the extent to which they would be able to get the work done well by the deadline of the 9th of May.
Now, 2011, the issue of money came up. How do we ensure that the same isn't repeated with this pavilion?
In essence, it's always a challenge. Obviously, the changing exchange rates is one of the hardest things to deal with in the context. Venice, at that particular time of the year, there's obviously a huge concentration on it, so it's a very expensive city to work in over the period of the Biennale. It's a 6-month exhibition, so that in and of itself takes a significant financial commitment. But we're learning, we're working. We continually talk to the service providers who we're working with, and of course the Biennale Foundation, and of course the South African representatives abroad who essentially represent our interests in Venice at the time. And so we try and make sure that we make the necessary resources available, but it is always a challenge.
What's the mandate for these 2 companies?
In essence, given the time frames, is to mount an exhibition that will accurately speak to the theme of the Venice Biennale. And what is very interesting about the proposal that speaks to the broader vision of the curatorial frame for the 56th Venice Biennale is looking back, but also looking forward. So there's been a lot of talk about why somebody who's so involved in heritage, and yet it speaks very well to the theme. So in essence, they've created a spine which looks at the extraordinary events surrounding the release of Dr. Nelson Mandela from prison, probably one of the most important events in the 20th century, and creating that as sort of an overarching narrative that will allow for different exhibitions to become part of that core spine. And we found that a very attractive proposition because it allows us in a very short space of time to put together almost a phased exhibition. So the exhibition will grow and change and be different over its 6-month period, which will also ensure that we get better foot traffic into the pavilion. So they've made a very, very, very innovative proposal under very difficult circumstances.
How much of a say does the DAC have in which artists these 2 curators take to the Biennale?
In essence, we adopt the standard government principle, which is a freedom of speech issue and a freedom of artistic expression. So we're not so much involved in the curatorial decisions as we are involved in the appointment of the curator. So we really do trust that the team will recognize the importance of this event for the South African visual arts sector and adopt work accordingly.
Upon looking for, searching for this Mashabane company, they are the guys that designed Freedom Park. Does that work in their favor, that there's something as solid as Freedom Park, to work in their advantage?
Obviously, everybody's careers become important, because one of the most important elements is the experience of the working team. So the fact that Mashabane Rose and the Apartheid Museum have worked extensively in the South African heritage and visual arts sector, of course, was a significant benefit.
How confident are you, though, that they'll put on a show so quickly? I mean, May 7th is now.
We are having ongoing discussions with them, and it's certainly true that there are elements that are very challenging. However, some of the work, such as the cell component, which is part of the heritage component, is already in Europe, because it was part of the Nelson Mandela exhibit for the South African season in France. So some of those kinds of elements are already there, but we have every confidence in the team, and we will be supporting them 100% to get this work done.
All right, so we need to speak to them, see how far they'll go. But thank you so much, Monica Newton. Thank you so much. Remember, she was CEO of NAC at some point. She's now the Deputy Director General of Arts and Culture Promotion and Development in the Department of Arts and Culture, speaking to us about the appointment of architecture firm Mashabane Rose in the Apartheid Museum as curators for the South Africa's pavilion at the world's most important art show, the Venice Biennale. It's happening on the 9th of May next month. Let's take a break. Stay with us.